The ship shook again as another blast echoed through the dark corridors. Commander Rillen gritted his teeth and pushed open the emergency door. Smoke poured in from the other side, but he didn't stop. He had one mission: rescue any survivors from the attacked outpost before it completely collapsed. He stepped into the chaos. Flames danced along the walls, alarms screamed, and power cables sparked like angry snakes. Most of the crew had either escaped or been vaporized. But the tracker on his wrist pulsed with a faint signal. A life form was still inside. Rillen moved quickly, dodging falling beams and crushing metal. His boots thudded against the floor as he followed the signal down into the ruined holding chambers. The place stank of melted steel and burned flesh. But the signal was stronger now. He kicked open a broken hatch. And there inside a cracked glass cell, he saw her, a Vulpine girl. She was curled on the ground, her long orange tail wrapped tightly around her. Her ears twitched weakly. Her armor was torn, but she wasn't burned. Her bright, almost glowing eyes looked up at him with a mixture of anger and fear. She tried to stand, but her legs trembled and gave out. "I'm not your pet," she hissed before he could say anything. "I'm not weak." Rillen didn't respond with words. He just knelt down, pulled off his cloak, and wrapped it around her. Her body was shaking, not from fear, from cold. She had been left here, abandoned by her own squad when the station was hit, probably considered a burden. He reached out to pick her up, but she slapped his hand. Her claws were sharp, but her hit was weak. "Don't touch me like I'm some wounded animal." "You're not," he said softly. "You're a soldier, but even soldiers bleed." She paused. That answer wasn't what she expected. He slowly lifted her into his arms. This time she didn't fight. She just looked away and muttered something in her native language. It almost sounded like an apology. He carried her out of the chamber, shielding her from falling sparks and debris. The evacuation shuttle was already humming in the landing bay. Rillen set her down gently and tapped on the control pad, opening the hatch. Medical drones rushed forward, but the Vulpine girl growled low and clung to his arm. "I don't want machines. Just let me breathe." Rillen nodded and waved the drones away. Inside the shuttle, she sat quietly on a padded bench, her arms crossed, tail twitching like a flame behind her. She glanced at him with narrowed eyes. "You're different from the others." He raised an eyebrow. "The others?" "Humans. You didn't leash me. You didn't chain me. You didn't ask what I'm worth." Rillen looked out the shuttle window. As the burning station shrank into the distance, "You're worth saving. That's all." Her lips parted, but she said nothing. For a long moment, silence filled the cabin. As the shuttle entered hyperspace, she finally spoke again. Her voice was lower now, tired. "My name is Vela. I'm Rillen." She looked at his arm. The place where she had scratched him was still bleeding. "You should have left me." "No," he said. "I don't leave people behind." That night, after the ship docked at the medical frigate, Rillen stayed by her side. Not because he was ordered to, but because something about her stayed with him. The fire in her eyes. The way she pretended she didn't need anyone, even when her whole world was falling apart. And when the medics dimmed the lights and left, Vela finally moved closer to him. She didn't ask. She didn't speak. She just curled up slowly beside him on the bed, her fluffy tail resting across his legs, her head on his chest. Rillen didn't move. She had said she wasn't a pet, and she wasn't, but maybe she was finally allowing herself to rest, just for one night, in the arms of someone who didn't see her as property, someone who saw her as something more. Rillen didn't sleep that night. Not really. He just sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the soft warmth of Vela's tail across his lap. She slept lightly, her ears twitching every time the engines hummed or a door opened somewhere down the hall. Her body was tense, even in rest, like she expected to be dragged away at any moment. When she finally stirred and opened her eyes, she didn't flinch. She just blinked up at him, her voice low. "You didn't chain me while I slept." Relan gave a small shake of his head. "Why would I?" "Because that's what happens to Vulpine captives." He leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "You're not a captive, not here." Vela sat up, stretching slowly, her tail sweeping the edge of the bed. Her armor was still damaged, and her legs looked bruised. But there was a strength in her movements now like fire warming after frost. "I wasn't always a soldier," she said quietly. Relan looked at her, waiting. "I used to dance, before the war reached my system. Before I was forced to pick up a weapon to protect the younger kids." She glanced at him with narrowed eyes. "Do you know how many humans were there when the bombs fell?" "None." Relan didn't argue. He just listened. "But you're here now," she added. "Why?" "Because I saw your signal." That was enough. She tilted her head. "You risked your life for a stranger? You weren't just a signal, Vela. You were someone left behind." "I've been left behind too." Something shifted in her expression. Not pity. Understanding. A soft alert broke the silence. Relan stood and walked to the control panel. A message flashed on screen: priority assignment. Escort alien civilian to Rehabilitation Center on Station Mara 8. It was a standard protocol. Injured alien species were sent to rehab centers for protection. Vela was already behind him, reading the message. "You're not going to send me there," she said firmly. "I don't want to," Relan replied. "But you have orders." Relan turned around and looked her in the eyes. "I've disobeyed. Worse for better reasons." A smile touched her lips for the first time. They made a decision right then. Not with words, but with trust. Relan wouldn't hand her over. And Vela wouldn't run. But keeping her out of the system wouldn't be easy. By law, alien survivors like her had to be processed, labeled, and monitored. The rehab centers were gentle. Some were worse than prisons. Relan knew one place where she might be safe. It was far, hidden, and forgotten, a moon once used for ranger training, now abandoned. No scanners, no patrols. Just cold forest and silence. He looked at her. "Can you survive in the wild?" She raised an eyebrow. "I was raised in it. Can you?" Relan smirked. "I'll manage." They suited up. He gave her a fresh set of armor, light but strong. It was built for scouts, but she adjusted it like it was made for her. The way she moved now, more confident, balanced, he realized something. Vela wasn't broken. She was just untrusted, unprotected, unseen. As they walked into the hangar, a young officer stepped in their way. "Sir, that Vulpine girl has to be transferred." Relan kept walking. "Commander." "That's a direct order from Central." Relan stopped. He didn't raise his weapon. He didn't threaten. "She's with me," he said calmly. The officer frowned. "She's dangerous." Vela stepped forward. "Not as dangerous as the silence of people who look away." The officer hesitated, then let them pass. The ship they took was small and old, barely more than a cargo hauler. But it flew. And it had enough stealth plating to slip past most surveillance grids. As they left orbit, Vela looked out the window. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I don't have to," Relan replied. "I see you now." And as the stars stretched around them for the first time, Vela allowed herself to believe maybe she wasn't just a weapon or a pet. Maybe she was finally free. The small ship sliced through space quietly, like a shadow between stars. Relan adjusted the controls while Vela sat beside him, her eyes fixed on the dark void outside. She hadn't said much since they left the station, but her ears kept twitching, picking up the hum of the engines, the rhythm of his breathing. "Are you afraid?" he asked without looking at her. She didn't answer right away. "Not of space," she said finally. "But I'm afraid of peace." Relan turned his head slightly. "Why?" "Because I don't know what to do with it." She looked tired again, not from her body, but from her memories. She touched the edge of her collarbone where a thin scar ran across her skin. They gave us collars once. Not for control, but for tracking. They said it was protection. But it only made it easier for the enemy to find us. Easier to hunt us like animals. Rillen frowned. They did that to children? To all of us. He didn't speak for a long moment. The silence inside the cockpit grew heavy. Then Vela reached out and touched the panel beside her. The screen showed their destination, a small forest moon, covered in green and snow. No lights, no cities. Just nature. Is this really the place? She asked. It's off every map. Rillen said. Even the rebels forgot about it. She nodded slowly. Good. The ship landed in a clearing surrounded by tall silver trees. Snow crunched under their boots as they stepped out. Cold air wrapped around them, sharp but clean. It felt like breathing for the first time again. Rillen activated the besa, small cabin with shielded walls and just enough heat to survive. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Vela moved through it with careful steps, checking every corner like a soldier, but also sniffing the air like a fox. She was both. Inside, she found a soft corner near the heater and curled up, her tail wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Rillen watched her from the doorway. She wasn't pretending to be strong anymore. She was just resting. But peace never lasts long. The ship's warning light blinked red. Rillen stood quickly and checked the signal. It wasn't Central Command, but it was worse. A bounty signal. Someone had put a price on Vela's head. A high one. Traced to a black market station deep in the outer rings. And worse, coordinates had been pinned from orbit. Someone was already nearby. He turned and saw her staring at him. You felt it too? He asked. She nodded. They're coming. Rillen pulled on his armor and powered up his rifle. Vela stood as well, sliding twin plasma daggers from a hidden pack. She didn't ask who sent the bounty. She already knew. My own people, she whispered. They think I broke some sacred rule, that I trusted a human. That I'm a traitor. You're not, Rillen said. She smiled faintly. They don't care. They just want silence. The sky above the forest cracked open with a soft boom. A drop pod shot down, landing hard near the edge of the trees. Rillen and Vela took cover in the shadows. He counted 2, 3, 5 armed soldiers stepping out, their gear covered in black and red. Not from Earth, not from the Union. Rogues. Vela growled low. They're not here for money. They're here to erase me. Rillen nodded. Then we give them a memory instead. Together. They moved like wind and fire through the trees. Rillen covered the left flank, firing controlled bursts that disabled one soldier after another. Vela was faster, leaping between branches, her daggers flashing like silver lightning. They weren't fighting to kill. They were fighting to survive. When the last rogue fell, gasping and stunned in the snow, Vela stood over him. You tell them, she said. The girl they called a pet burned their shame into the stars. Then, she walked away without looking back. Rillen followed her, his chest tight. Not with fear, but with something new. Respect. Admiration. Maybe something deeper. That night, when they returned to the cabin, Vela didn't curl up near the heater. She sat beside him on the bench and leaned her head gently on his shoulder. Neither of them spoke, but something had changed between them, something neither bounty nor war could erase. The days passed quietly on the forest moon. Snow melted slowly, revealing green grass and soft moss beneath the trees. Birds returned. Light warmed the sky again. Vela moved differently now. She walked through the woods with her tail raised high, eyes sharp, ears alert, but no longer tense. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was watching, exploring, learning. She even smiled once while watching 2 small creatures chase each other near a stream. Rillen spent the mornings reinforcing the cabin walls and setting traps in the forest, not to catch animals, but to alert them in case another dropship arrived. He knew the bounty might still be out there, and they had to be ready. One evening, He found Vela standing on a cliff above a frozen lake. Her hair moved gently in the breeze, her tail resting beside her legs. She didn't notice him at first. "You've changed," Rillen said as he stepped closer. Vela glanced at him but didn't speak. "You used to stare at the stars like they were enemies," he added. "Now you look like you miss them." She gave a small nod. "I do. But I don't know if I want to return to that world." "You could. I wouldn't stop you." "I know," she said quietly. "That's why I won't." Rillen stepped beside her. "You're free, Vela. You don't owe me anything." She turned to him, her eyes calm. "And you don't own me." But still. I stayed. For a long moment, neither of them said anything more. The air was clean. The lake below shimmered like glass. And something strange happened in that silence. She reached out and held his hand, not as a prisoner, not as a soldier, but as someone choosing to stay. That night, something woke them both. A loud static pulse cut through the cabin's peace. The screen on Ryland's communicator blinked again. Distress beacon detected nearby. "What now?" Rillen muttered, already pulling on his gear. Vela grabbed her daggers. "We'll check it out." They followed the beacon through the woods, past the lake, and into a deep valley where something had crashed. Smoke rose between the trees. A small escape pod lay broken open against the rocks. Inside it was a child, Vela gasped. She knelt beside the girl, small, Vulpine like her, but younger, maybe 10. Her tail was burned, her cheek scratched. But she was alive. The child flinched when she saw Rillen, her eyes wide with fear. "It's okay," Vela whispered gently. "He's safe. She's from one of our colonies," Vela added. "They must have been attacked." Rillen looked up at the sky. No ships in orbit, no signals. Whoever attacked her ship. They were gone now. They brought the girl back to the cabin. Vela cared for her all night, cleaning her wounds, feeding her warm broth, keeping her tail wrapped close to keep her warm. The child finally slept, holding tightly to Vela's arm. "She didn't speak," Rillen said. "Not one word." "She's scared," Vela replied. "I know that feeling." Rillen watched her for a long moment. "You were right." "About what?" "You're not a pet, you're a protector." Vela didn't respond. But her eyes softened. When morning came, the child finally opened her mouth. Her voice was small. "Are you my new mother?" Vela froze. Then slowly she nodded. "Yes, I'll protect you now." And Rillen saw it clear and bright. She wasn't just healing anymore. She was becoming something more, a leader, a guardian, and maybe someone worth fighting for, not just protecting. The child's name was Lyra. She didn't remember much, just fire, screaming, and being pushed into an escape pod. Her small hands always clutched Vela's arm tightly, afraid she might vanish. Days passed. Rillen fixed the heating system and reinforced the cabin doors. Vela taught Lyra how to stay quiet in the forest, how to hide, how to run if danger came. But slowly, those lessons turned into walks, then play. Lyra started smiling again. Rillen watched them from the distance sometimes. Vela used to stand like a lone warrior. Now she crouched to Lyra's height, tail curled protectively around the girl. She even laughed once, sharp and short, like she was still learning how. One night, after Lyra had fallen asleep, Rillen and Vela sat near the fire. The warmth from the flames made the cabin glow soft orange. Snow fell gently outside the window. "She called you mother," Rillen said. Vela nodded. "She needed someone. I don't know if I'm ready." "You don't have to be perfect." She looked into the fire. "I was trained to fight, not to care. I never thought anyone would depend on me like this. She's alive because of you." Vela's ears twitched. "She's alive because of us." That night, for the first time, Vela didn't sleep on the floor. She curled beside Rillen on the long bench, her tail wrapped around him and Lyra both. She didn't speak, but the way she rested her head on his chest said more than words could. But peace doesn't last in quiet places. The sky cracked again 3 nights later. A large ship entered orbit, silent and slow. Ryland's sensors lit. Up stealth class, high-tech, not bounty hunters. Not Union forces. Assassins. Vela saw the signal and froze. I know that code, she said. That's the Shadow Crest, my people's elite hunters. Ryland stood quickly. They tracked Lyra's pod. They're not coming to negotiate, Vela said coldly. They'll kill her, and then me. Lyra clung to Vela's tail. Don't let them take me. I won't, Vela said, her voice trembling but strong. They had only one option: hide. In the forest, draw the assassins away from the child, and fight. Ryland gave Vela his backup rifle. She took it silently. The metal was cold, but her grip was steady. Last time I fought them, she said, I was alone. You're not alone now, Ryland replied. They set traps along the forest edge, then took position beneath the thick trees. The wind howled, snow falling harder now. Then shadows moved through the forest, tall, silent, armored figures. Their helmets were black glass, no words, no threats. Only cold death in their steps. Vela moved like lightning. Her rifle fired. Sharp bursts as she dodged through the trees. Ryland covered the flank, taking 2 down with clean shots. But the assassins didn't slow. They moved like ghosts, silent and fast. One reached the cabin. Lyra screamed. Vela didn't hesitate. She ran faster than Ryland had ever seen. Her claws ripped through the air. She crashed into the attacker just before he reached the door. Her rifle clattered to the ground, but she didn't need it. She fought like fire, claws, fangs, fury. The assassin slammed into the wall. And Vela stood over him, panting, blood dripping from her arm. Ryland arrived seconds later and saw her trembling. I'm fine, she said. You're bleeding. I said I'm fine. But her body dropped to one knee. Ryland caught her. Lyra rushed forward and wrapped her arms around Vela's waist, crying, Don't die, please don't die. Vela looked at Ryland, her eyes glassy. I'm not leaving her. You won't, he said. They pulled her back inside the cabin. Ryland sealed the doors and activated the backup shields. The assassins wouldn't get through again, not tonight. As Vela rested with Lyra in her arms, she whispered softly, I'm not your pet, I never was. Ryland sat beside them and smiled. No, he said. You're our heart now. And even as pain filled her limbs and darkness tugged at her eyes, she held on. Not for war, not for vengeance, but for love. Vela lay in the bed, her arm bandaged tightly, her breathing calm but shallow. The fight had taken more out of her than she wanted to admit. Ryland sat beside her, cleaning his rifle. He had barely left her side in 2 days. Lyra sat curled at the foot of the bed, tail tucked in her lap, watching both of them silently. The forest outside was quiet, but Ryland didn't trust it. They had driven off the Shadow Crest assassins. But only just. It wouldn't be long before more came. Especially if Vela's own people considered her a threat to their secrets. Ryland placed the rifle aside and looked down at Vela. Her eyes were closed. But she wasn't sleeping. You should rest, he said softly. I'm tired, she replied. But not from the fight. He waited for her to continue. I'm tired of running, of hiding, of waiting for someone else to control my fate. He reached for her hand, holding it gently. Then we stop running, and do what? We make them afraid of chasing you. She opened her eyes and looked at him. You'd go that far? I already have. That night, Vela stood up. For the first time without shaking. Her strength had returned, not just in her body, but in her eyes. There was a fire there now. A decision made. We don't hide anymore, she said. We fight. They activated the cabin's long-range signal booster and sent out a coded message. Not to the Union, not to the bounty boards. To survivors, to outcasts, to any Vulpine. or human who had been forgotten by war. They offered shelter, protection, and a warning. The girl they abandoned was still alive. And she had friends now. At first, no reply came. Then 2 days later, a scout ship landed in the clearing. Then another. One brought supplies. Another brought a medic who had once served under Ryland's command. Then came a silent figure in white armor who bowed to Vela and whispered, "I remember you. You saved my daughter during the siege." Soon, the cabin turned into a camp, then a base. Vela led the operations, teaching others how to defend the forest, how to protect themselves without becoming monsters. Ryland handled the outer patrols. He trained the younger ones, taught them tactics, discipline, and how to fight with honor, not rage. Lyra watched all of it with wide eyes. One night, as Vela sat on the bench sharpening her blade, Lyra walked up to her and touched her tail. "Are we safe now?" Vela paused. "For now. But safety is something we have to protect together." Lyra looked toward Ryland. "He's strong." Vela smiled. "Yes, but even strong men need someone to stand beside them." Lyra sat down beside her. "You're not alone anymore." "No," Vela said. "I'm not." That evening, as the stars shimmered overhead and the fires glowed warm in the camp, Ryland brought her a warm drink. They sat together watching. The others laugh and train and rest. "You've built something," Ryland said. "No," Vela replied. "We built something." She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "I still don't belong to one," she whispered. Ryland nodded. "You never did. But I choose to be here. With you, with her, with them." Her tail curled around his waist, soft and warm. And for the first time since he had found her on that burning station, Ryland saw her not as a wounded warrior, but as a leader, a protector. A woman full of strength and heart, and maybe someone he couldn't imagine living without. Snow began to melt from the treetops as a new season touched the forest moon. Flowers bloomed where battles had once been fought. The camp had grown now full of tents, weapons, laughter, and life. Vela stood at the edge of it all, her eyes scanning the horizon. She wore a long dark coat over her armor now, her hair tied back, her tail moving slowly behind her. She looked like a commander, but she moved like a guardian. Behind her, Lyra played with 2 other younglings, her laughter echoing between the trees. Ryland approached from the West Patrol, brushing dust from his sleeves. "They're late," he said. "They always are," Vela replied. "But they'll come." And they did. Within the hour, a ship descended slowly into the camp clearing. It bore no military flags, only a painted mark on the side, a symbol of peace between 2 species. Vela's message had spread. Survivors from both sides, humans and Vulpine, had started talking. The door opened. From it stepped an elder Vulpine leader with silver fur and cautious eyes. He looked around, seeing humans training Vulpine, children, playing with mixed laughter. He turned to Vela. "I expected blood." Vela raised an eyebrow. "Then you haven't been listening. You were labeled a traitor." "I was protecting a child." The elder looked toward Lyra. "That one?" "Yes," Vela said. "And I'd do it again." He looked at Ryland. "And you, are you her protector?" Ryland shook his head. "No, I'm her partner." There was a long silence. Then the elder stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I was wrong," he said. "You didn't betray us. You became what we forgot how to be." The message was clear. The bounty was lifted. The shame erased. The war hadn't ended everywhere, but here, in this quiet part of the galaxy, peace had been born not through treaties, but through trust. That night, the camp celebrated. Fires burned high. Music, human and Vulpine, mixed in the air. Lyra danced with the other children, her tail bouncing behind her. Ryland stood with a drink in his hand, watching her and smiling. Vela walked up beside him and leaned against his side. "She still thinks I'm her mother," she whispered. Ryland looked at her. "Maybe you are." Vela nodded slowly. Maybe. I want to be. The stars above were bright and clear. I was raised to serve, she said. To obey, then to fight, but never to choose. And now? Rillin asked. She turned to him and smiled. Now I choose you. I choose this. And then she curled into his lap, her body warm against his. Her tail wrapped softly across them both. As if sealing the moment. She wasn't owned. She wasn't hunted. She wasn't alone. She had found something no cage or contract could offer: love, freedom, and home. And in the arms of a human who never asked her to be anything but herself. The Vulpine girl finally slept without fear.